Good morning, everybody, and thank you so much for spending time with us this morning to look at the subject of growing your AHP career. We've got some concepts that we want to test with you, and we welcome Dr. Stephanie Tempest and Kian Lim with us today to tell you about a few of the concepts we want to discuss with you. So the first part of our section will be just giving you some information. There will be some polls that come up. This is a very interactive session. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to know about what you already know. And then we will go into breakout rooms where you can have discussions. The breakout rooms will not be recorded, but we will pop into those breakout sessions if you need any support. We want you to have a conversation about what you've heard and how that lands with you and how you think you can take that forward. What we'll then do is we'll then bring you back to the main room. We'll have a whiteboard and we want you to add your comments to that whiteboard. So it's just to prepare you for the session today. So next slide, please. So the session will last 1.5 hours. There are no scheduled breaks within this webinar this morning. The chat function is enabled, as we've mentioned. Please, if you haven't already, add in who you are and where you're joining us from. Your cameras have been turned off and your mics have been muted, as I mentioned at this section, but they will be turned on when you're in the breakout rooms. The presentations will be recorded and the slides will be shared and will be available to you after we have run all of the webinars over the next couple of weeks. As mentioned, the planned breakout rooms are to encourage discussion. We want you to turn your cameras on and have some discussion about what you've heard. But please be thoughtful of other people, contribute and support others, being respectful and valuing all their knowledge and experience. Next slide, please. So I've already gone through the agenda, but I'm going to give you an update first. I will then hand over to my colleagues, Dr. Stephanie Tempest and Dr. Kian Lim, and then we'll go out to the breakout rooms. Next slide, please. So my name's Amanda Weaver. I'm the National AHP Preceptorship Workforce Lead at Health Education England for the National AHP Preceptorship and Foundation Support Programme. And I just want to introduce our programme to you just briefly so that you can get a feel of where this work sits within our programme. Next slide, please. So we know that in the first year alone, we have people leaving, AHPs leaving the NHS, and it's hitting about 11%. So we know that we want to support people within their roles within those first few years, especially when we know people leave and look for other opportunities. And the reasons that are given is around workload, the demand on them, how maybe different it is and how they don't feel maybe prepared from where they've done their studies or their journey that they've come on to and reach employment. But there's also something about work-life balance within that. But what we're also hearing very strongly is around people's passion to develop new skills, to grow within their roles, but also to land within those teams and feel valued and part of a team when they start. And that is the importance behind all of the work we're doing in the programme. Next slide, please. So our AHP Preceptorship and Foundation Support Programme has been set up with the aim for AHPs to have inclusive access to tailored support and development across a range of transitions. So we're not just talking around the sort of undergraduate to graduate post, we're talking about return to practice, internationally educated, but also change of sector as well, because we know that there's differences in preceptorship needs, especially when you're moving from one sector to another. So we want to ensure that we support AHPs as much as we can as they transition into employment and that we recruit and retain our workforce for the future. But also keeping at the heart of this, that we give patients and service users access to more confident, competent and engaged AHPs for the future as well. And that sits across 3 phases: pre-preceptorship, preceptorship and foundation. And what you're going to talk about today weaves through those 3 different elements within our programme. Next slide, please. It's very much about tailored support. People join professions from different journeys, whether it be from a BSc, an MSc, an apprenticeship, return to practice or internationally educated. So everyone has their own individual needs. They also then have their professional identity needs and being supported by your professional body and your competencies that may sit within there. But then you're also part of the allied health professions family, and it's finding that identity and amplifying that voice as an AHP. And then how do we sit within our healthcare workforce? So everything we're doing is making sure that we have tailored support so it focuses on what the needs of the preceptee are and individualizing that as much as possible. And definitely what we're going to talk about today is really thinking about your own needs and what you can take forward from this. Next slide, please. So just so that we can show where this sits within our work. We've got various outputs of work, but there is a step to work pre-preceptorship e-learning for health module that was launched in November. We've got some multi-professional preceptor training that's in progress that will be coming out in the spring. We're working with the HCPC to provide preceptorship principles that we published in the spring this year. And we've just started the preceptorship implementation framework, which is a project alongside those principles to put those into action. You can find further details for all of this on our Preceptorship and Foundation Support webpage, and please do sign up to our newsletter as well, which will give you all of the upcoming news and webinars and events that we're holding. But we're working very closely with not just our nursing and midwifery colleagues, but also the HCPC and all of our professional bodies with all the work that we're doing to make sure that everything aligns and is taken forward. So this piece of work we're going to discuss today weaves through all of those different elements, and it's about thinking about where you go and your development. So this is very much putting you into that space this morning about thinking about how do you reflect and where you're going on your own personal journey. So I'm going to hand over, next slide please, to Dr. Stephanie Tempest, and she's going to take you through the session with us today.
Thank you, Amanda, and hello and welcome. My name's Steph, and I lost count of how many professions we've got as I was looking through the chat. So that's great. I'm absolutely delighted that we've got a really good multi-professional audience today. And what we're going to do, as Amanda said, is we're going to test some concepts with you. So this really is testing. So we're really keen to hear your thoughts because it'll help us inform future work. I'll tell you a bit about my career and my story as we go through the concepts because I'm going to use them as examples. The other thing I'd like to say is you'll see the hashtag at the bottom of the slides, hashtag AHP careers. If you are on social media, we've got hundreds joining us over the course of the webinars we're running. We know there are thousands more that we would love to reach. So if you like to keep busy and active whilst you're on webinars, we invite you to take photographs, to post things on social media, to share your comments and help us get that conversation going and broader as well. So next slide, please. Before I start, I want to acknowledge the context that we're all working in. We completely appreciate and are sensitive to the reality that there is a lot outside of our control, including costs of living, some job opportunities, and the circumstances in which we find ourselves in. I'm thinking of strike action and others. And we want to be mindful and sensitive to that. Equally, I want to share with you one of my most inspirational line managers across my career so far once sat me down and said, Steph, sometimes you've got to control the controllables, and that helps you stay focused. And it's become a bit of a mantra for me. So when I'm feeling that overwhelm, when I'm feeling a bit out at sea, let's control the controllables. And a lot of that is the decisions we make about owning our own careers and thinking about what we want to do with them. So next slide, please. Before we go into testing the four concepts, it's always best to start with the why. Why do we want to do this work? And we're going to dream big on this one. We want to share with you a vision of what it could look like as we evolve AHP careers. There are pockets of excellence in many places, but what I'm going to present to you isn't how the world is right now, but wouldn't it be lovely if we got there? So the next slide, please. The first part of dreaming big. We want to do this work so all AHPs know about, value and feel supported to explore and take diverse career opportunities across all of the four pillars of practice, and we'll come on to those in a moment. We would love for all AHPs to respect and celebrate the career choices and routes that we all choose, knowing that we all belong to the same AHP community. Next slide, please. Part of dreaming big is that all of us as AHPs feel empowered to create individualized growth-based careers. So we don't just slot into the careers that are available for us and think that's our lot, that we own our career choices, that they fit with our lives outside of work, and we know how to lead those conversations. I definitely didn't when I started as a band 5 many years ago, and I definitely wasn't able to make bold choices. That has grown with time. So that's what we would like to be able to offer. And finally, then on the next slide, Dreaming Big Part 3 is about the managers themselves. So AHP managers are able to actively listen, lead and respond to career conversations, knowing that growth is not always the same as promotion. We're going to come on to that in a bit. And managers know that valuing, validating, creating diverse opportunities for AHPs to grow in their careers can enhance recruitment and retention. And we want AHP managers themselves to feel supported, to create new and different opportunities, to enable people to thrive in their careers. And we've seen some of that happening as a response to the pandemic. What can we do to capitalise on all of that so our careers are all enriching and fulfilling? Next slide, please. So this is what we want to test with you today. I'm really looking forward to hearing your thoughts. They are concepts, so be creative and go with us if they feel a little bit odd or a little bit strange to start with. This isn't us telling you what to do with your career. This is us saying, here's an idea for you to put in your back pocket for now. What do you think about it? So we're going to test the concept of growth-based careers with you. 4 pillars of practice, the novice to expert versus specialist to generalist continuum. I still wish that had a shorter name. And then I will hand over to my colleague Kian to talk about the Kawa approach. So let's get going. Next slide, please. Growth-based careers. What I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what this concept is, and then we're going to put a poll up and we're going to ask you for your immediate thoughts. So as I'm talking, I want you to notice those unfiltered first reactions. And please remember that any reaction is fine, including if you really just don't like the idea either. Like we said, we want to invite people, including yourselves, operational managers, strategic leaders, to think about careers in a different way by providing an alternative to the focus of promotion-based career ladders. Now, that's not to say climbing a career ladder is absolutely fine for some AHPs, but we know that for many people, they want to do something different, especially across the multi-generational workforce. So we know that promotion-based career ladders, or the concept of constantly climbing one career ladder, doesn't work for everyone. We want to consider alternative ways to support recruitment and retention. So we'd like to offer you this different approach. I'm a classic example. I'll tell you a bit about me. I'm a classic example of someone who's chosen to step off the career ladder. So my occupational therapy and AHP career, I'm in year 25 now, might even be 26. And I started off climbing. I did start climbing the ladder, securing promotions within the NHS. But then I had this urge, this itch to develop my education and research skills. So I chose to move into higher education, and I worked as a lecturer and a researcher for 12 years. It was a big leap, and it felt like a big move at that time. And part of me, if I'm honest, felt a little bit guilty for leaving the coalface, and somehow that wasn't helpful. 12 years after in academia, I get another itch. I've developed my education and my research skills, but I wanted to develop my strategic leadership knowledge and skills. So I moved to my professional body, which was the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. And I gave myself 5 years there to deliver on a specific piece of work that I was really passionate about. And then 2 years ago, I set up my own business and now get the privilege to support learning and development for the wider health and care workforce. And my current areas of growth centre on organisational development, human resources. So alongside my AHP identity, Amanda showed you all of those different identities that we all have. I've added another layer onto mine, and I've become a Chartered Fellow at the Chartered Institute for Personnel and Development. So I can bring all of that knowledge back into the AHP professions. So I'm hoping by sharing my story, you'll see that I'm not on a career ladder. And I'm definitely still growing, but I'm growing in different ways. I'm growing across sectors. I'm growing laterally. And I honestly think, rather than feeling guilty about like that when I left the NHS, there's something to be proud of. I think that's the beauty of our careers. We can choose to take them in many different places. There are many different twists and turns in our careers. And for me, I checked a few months ago, I still have 19 years and 10 months left before I can draw my pension. So please don't feel you have to pack everything in the first 5 years and save something for the rest of your career, would be my tip to take away from today. So if we move on to the next slide, what is a growth-based career culture? So the world of work outside of health and care have been talking about growth-based careers as a concept for a number of years. These are podcasts, a quote from a podcast from the CIPD back in 2016. So growth-based culture is all about the build. So this is about you thinking about how you want to build your own career and what capabilities you need, whether you need to develop specific capabilities to move into education, into research, to stay in the NHS and work with experience to become an advanced practitioner. But the point is they're planned moves. So you choose to move laterally or vertically. You continue on your ladder, you step off and you grow in a lateral way. So they're deliberate and planned movements. So we shift our career culture purely from promotion based to thinking about growth. And we do that by creating partnerships. I'd like to add a little bit of an extension here to Joseph's quote, because for me, it's also about validating and legitimizing staying put in the same place. We don't always have to be on the move. I think sometimes we put ourselves under pressure that we've constantly got to think about the where next and what we're going to do after. Sometimes a growth-based career can be making that decision to develop your skills, to develop breadth and depth so you can stay where you are. And so this is the concept, the first concept we would like to share with you. So if we move on to the next slide, before we ask you to vote, I just want you to read this quote. It's from a journalist and it's just Bridget Thornson's own opinions, but notice your reaction. And if you could pop your thoughts in the chat box, I'd be really interested. So Thorenson says, a career ladder creates no value except for the person climbing it, whilst a career river feeds an entire ecosystem. If you embrace your career as a river instead of a ladder, you're better able to confront the obstacles. I'd rather live in a professional world of rivers where we can all go with the flow together. So just notice your reaction, and if you're happy to, pop your thoughts about it in the chat box so we can start our conversation going. We're going to move on to the next slide, and this is where we ask you to do a little bit of voting. So the first poll that's coming up, oh, I had a thumbs up. That's lovely. Do you know what? Because I can't see your faces. It's really lovely when you get a bit of reaction and you get the chat box moving and you get reaction. So I'm grateful for that. Sometimes it feels like you're talking in an empty room. The first poll, do you use the growth-based career concept already? You might not have known that's what it's called, but were you thinking like that already? Or were you actually using the growth-based career concept? So please press your responses to that. Lovely, I can see them coming in. Sophie, I really like your comment there about supporting us to work together in harmony rather than being in a hierarchy. I think you've hit on something there about that, the competitive edge that hierarchies can sometimes cause. Thank you. And the idea of it sounding organic and positive, Sandrine, thank you. So in terms of the concept, so 39% of you are already using this, 60% it's new. So thank you for that. We're going to come on to the next poll, which is going to pop up in a moment, which is how likely are you to use this concept in the future? Is this something that you're going to put in your front pocket instead of your back pocket? What do you think about this? So it's nice to see we've got a really nice mixed response coming through there. 56% very likely, 26 likely, 13 not sure, and absolutely, and some people are unlikely, and that's absolutely fine as well. Some, like I said, for some people, career ladders work absolutely fine, and it certainly did for the first part of my career. And then I chose to take a growth approach, except I didn't know that's what it was. I didn't have the narrative, which is why I felt a certain amount of guilt when I chose to move. Thank you. So that's the first one done. So this is essentially how it's going to go. Before the breakout rooms, we're going to share with you a few more, 3 more concepts, and then we're going to ask you to vote and then fill the chat box with your comments. And I like your comment, Nahid, there about we learn from each other this way. And I think that's so important in our world as AHPs. So how likely are we to use it? We've got a nice main range there. Okay, so that's the growth-based concept under our belts. We're going to move on to the second one. And the second one is a little bit shorter. It's called the 4 pillars of practice. So next slide, please. The 4 pillars of practice pop up in many places these days. The first one you'll see here is taken from Health Education England back in 2017 from the Advanced Practice Framework. And you will also see them feature in consultant level frameworks, and there's talk about them featuring in other levels of practice as well. So the 4 pillars are clinical practice, leadership and management, education, and research. So you heard from my own story how I started my career in clinical practice and I developed that pillar. I did some leadership within that role and some education, and I also did my master's whilst I worked clinically, so I fulfilled the research pillar. The other example you'll see, now some people see a key when they see this, which I never saw until someone told me it looked like a key. So this is the same 4 pillars of practice, slightly different wording, and this is what you'll notice. You'll see variations of the 4 pillars. This comes from the professional body. This comes from the Royal College of Occupational Therapists. So that project I told you about that I was passionate about leading on was the RCOT Career Development Framework. And in the Career Development Framework, we chose to adopt the 4 pillars of practice, slightly changing some of the wording. So we had professional practice, because not all occupational therapists work in clinics, they work in schools and prisons and many other places. Leadership, facilitation of learning, evidence, research and development. So you'll see these 4 pillars in many different places, and please look out for them now if you haven't seen them before. And the idea is that when you're thinking about growing your career, whether it's vertical or lateral, you need to think and incorporate elements of all 4 pillars of practice for your CPD. And there's an expectation, for example, as an advanced practitioner, that your job description will have elements of all 4 in it. Those job descriptions are evolving, they're not perfect yet. That's part of the evolution of our community. So here's the idea. You've got the 4 pillars and you think about which one you might want to shine a light on more, depending on the role you took. So when I moved into academia, obviously my education pillar grew. I studied for my PhD at the same time, so my research pillar grew. When I moved to work for the professional body, my strategic leadership pillar grew. And others will go up and down at the same time. Sometimes I say that to people, the idea of a pillar going down, and people are like, what? Oh no, I'm not sure about that. But that's okay. You're shining a light and you're building your career, and it's fluid and it grows in different ways. So the next slide is to ask you to vote on this. So tell us what you think about it in the chat box. But the first poll is, do you use the 4 pillars of practice already? And we're going to ask you to vote on that first. Thank you. This is really helpful doing the polls because it's giving us a sense of what's already known out there already. So more of you know about the 4 pillars of practice, 56%, 44%. And Rachel, I completely pick up on your point about the word research. And there's actually work going on and underway at the moment, led by Dr. Jo Watson, to Health Education England to write a research in practice framework to dispel those myths. So exactly what you're talking about. So please look out for that in the future as that work evolves. So 57% of you have used it. And Roxanne, I like your comment about using it to put together your in preparation for graduation using the career development framework. So that's brilliant. So next poll is, how likely are you to use the 4 pillars of practice as a concept in the future? So we've got some very likely, so yeah, very likely and likely and not sure for now. And for those of you who aren't sure, absolutely, because we're throwing quite a lot of concepts at you today. We're halfway through. Kian's is a bit longer though, but absolutely, just maybe hold it, think about it. It's likely you will come across the concept at some point, and just think about how you want to work with it in the future. So that's quite a popular one, that one. Thank you. Okay, so we've done the concept of growth-based careers. We've done the 4 pillars of practice. We'll move on to the next slide with the pithy title. I want to share with you novice to expert versus specialist to generalist continuum. Before we take you to the next slide, I want to share with you, sorry, Mike, that's my fault, I put you on the spot. I just want to share with you why this one is so important to me. Every year, like I say, my passion and my expertise lies in supporting learning and development of the workforce. And every year on social media, I've been on Twitter for the past 10 years, and without fail, every year I will see posts on Twitter from people who are qualifying or just about going into the workforce who say they're panicking almost, or they're feeling anxious because they don't know what they want to specialise in. So just hold that thought, and I always try and answer as many as I can and offer an alternative narrative. And next slide, please, Mike, to show you what that is. So when you graduate, you naturally sit more at the novice end of a spectrum that goes from novice to expert. But what you'll see here is that intersecting the novice to expert continuum is the concept of specialist to generalist. So keep with me on this. If you need me to repeat stuff, just ask me in the chat. But this is the idea that specialist is not a level of practice. So specialist is a scope of practice. So if you do want to climb your career ladder, it doesn't depend on you choosing a specialism. You can go from novice to expert and never work in a specialism. You can be an advanced generalist. Equally, to hopefully take the pressure off ourselves, when we start in a specialism, you start as a junior specialist. So it's not a level of practice where somehow you choose to move into a specialism and therefore you're expected to be an expert in it overnight. This one was definitely helpful in my career. Now, I don't have a Sharpie with me, and I'm not going to attempt to draw on this diagram, because if I showed you what my career looked like, I would essentially be colouring up and down and across all over. But I will share with you a little bit of my story to highlight this point. So I was a novice clinician when I graduated in 1997. And then after doing my rotations, I chose to specialise. So I specialised in neurosciences and stroke. So on day one of specialising, I was definitely a junior specialist. I specialised after about 18 months into my career. So I was definitely a junior specialist. And then I spent a number of years in working within stroke and moved up. So from novice, I became much more expert and was an advanced specialist in neurosciences and stroke. Then, like I said, I took that leap of faith and moved into higher education. Yes, I could take a lot of knowledge and skills with me, but I went back to being a novice because I was a novice educator and I was a novice researcher. Had I had this framework at the time, it would have taken a lot of pressure off the pressure I put on myself, basically. So I was a novice educator and researcher. Over my course, over the 12 years I was in higher education, I worked my way up to being more of an expert in the field, but I didn't specialize. My research focus was a very generalist focus. I taught across a number of programs, so I was much more of an advanced generalist this time. But I didn't get much strategic leadership experience. I did at a local level, but not national, like I told you. So then I moved to RCOT and back down to being a novice practitioner. So I was a novice in being a strategic leader. The advantage every time I moved back to being a novice was I could take bodies of knowledge and loads of experience with me. So I wasn't feeling overwhelmed or starting from scratch. I was able to apply all of that knowledge, but I definitely was a novice as a strategic leader. And then I've remained generalist across all topics of learning development at RCOT. It was across all UK countries. And then, like I said, 2 years ago, I became a novice again, a novice businesswoman, a novice business owner, and a novice entrepreneur. And so this continuum allows you to think about, where do I sit currently? Where am I plotting myself? Where do I want to go? And it helps you think about how that changes as you grow your career. So can I just have some thumbs up if that's clear enough? Because I normally look at people's faces and sometimes there's a little bit of confusion at this. Brilliant, thank you. I doubt myself on a regular basis. So we'll move to the next poll. And it's, do you use the novice to expert versus specialist to generalist continuum already? Let's see how many of you have heard of this, have come across this. Or actually, is this something that's landing quite new? So this one is newer, and that marries the poll from the webinar we did on Monday. So some of you have heard of it, about 8%, 91% haven't. And again, this is popping up in various places. So whatever profession you are in, a lot of professions have their own career development frameworks or professional development frameworks, and some of them feature this continuum, and it's definitely in things like the advanced practice framework as well. So then the next poll is, how likely are you to use this concept in the future? And once you've cast your vote, if you're able to give us a little bit of qualitative information and put some thoughts in the chat box, that would be really helpful too. Including if it's not something for you. So looking at the poll coming through, very likely, and likely is high. And not sure. Again, it's another concept to think and play about. I hate it when I get put on the spot to make a decision, but just go with those gut reactions. Thanks, Naheed. This idea that it can help you map. It is a good map, really, to map out your thoughts and to plot yourself and to think where you sit. Ah, thanks, Roxanne. So more guidance on how to apply it. Yes, we'll take that on board and see what we can do. Thank you. Now we'll close the poll there, and I'd be delighted to hear you're going to stop listening to me talk. I am thrilled that I can hand you over to a colleague I've worked with for many years and invite Dr. Kian Lim to join us now.
Okay, good. Good to have so many of you join us, and I suspect some of you might be a little bit familiar with the Kawa model and others might not. So I guess the Kawa is actually a Japanese word for river, and it's also known as the river model. But today I'm just going to talk about how you could use the Kawa approach as a way to maybe understand your career and your development and growth. So just bear with me because I'll be throwing some probably slightly alien concepts. I think, you know, a lot of the kind of frameworks that we are familiar with are quite linear, they're quite rigid, quite fixed. But this is something that is actually much more fluid, it's much more flowing, and you can, you know, use it as you want to, and then you can come back to it. And it doesn't have to be just one linear way of thinking about things. So originally it was created more as a clinical model to kind of use with your service users, patients, etc., etc. But actually, I've used the Kawa approach in many different ways with many groups of clinicians and so on. So from students thinking about their own transition to university, to reflecting on their clinical placements, to clinicians looking at how they might use it in terms of thinking of their career development and what they want to do next, to also researchers using it as a way of reflecting on their research journey and so on. So it is very flexible. It's quite naturalistic, as you will probably find out in a moment. And the whole idea around it is to maybe think about all of us having a unique personal journey that might be reflective of our life journey, but also reflective of our career journey and the different experiences that we have, and also the different influences that impact upon our both career and our life journey. And I think it's important to kind of weave those together, because I think it's, you can't really think about your professional journey and development without thinking about your personal development and your journey and so on. So I think, to extract them and to kind of think of them very separately is probably not a very helpful thing. So next slide, please. So for some of you, you might be familiar with this. For some of you, this might be just totally different, but it's quite a naturalistic model. And I would get you to think of the kind of metaphor around the river and the kind of different components that might exist in the river. And I'll try to explain it in that way. And obviously after today, if you need some information or if something intrigues you and you want to know a little bit more, please do contact me. But the whole idea is that we all have a kind of a flow within our rivers, or a flow within our careers and our lives and so on. And the more flow there is, the more freeing that is, then the better it is in terms of things not getting in the way. So the river flow is a way of thinking about your life journey or your career journey, for that matter, and all the kind of different priorities that you might have and the different experiences that have an impact on it and so on. And then we think about the kind of riverbanks, and the riverbanks kind of provide a way of thinking about the kind of context, the environment. So the social environment, the physical environment, it could be the financial factors, it could be our family that might have an influence on the career choices that we take, or the decisions that we make in terms of different directions that we might go in. And then we have things like rocks, and they represent kind of the barriers or the obstacles or the challenges that we might face. So sometimes you might think, well, actually, if I make that decision here to go that particular way, as Steph has said, it could mean on the surface looking as if I'm going backwards, because I'm starting in a new area that I'm not familiar with. Or it might mean, there might be a financial implication to it. And so that might kind of create a barrier for you. And you'll be thinking, well, what will other people think? Is this the right direction I'm taking? What opportunities I might miss if I'm doing this? So that so they represent the kind of barriers, obstacles, challenges that you might face. And then you have something called the driftwoods, and they're kind of positive things, or they could end up being liabilities or negative things. And it's a way of thinking about all the other factors that have an impact. So it could be your attitude, it could be your perspective on, okay, so if I go this particular way, what resources do I have? What things could I draw upon that could positively support me in this career direction, and so on. And then the spaces are those opportunities, those things that you could draw upon, those options that you might have that you could take, which then would enhance that career growth and development and flow. And as I was trying to say, you know, I don't really want to talk about promotions. Obviously, promotions are part of that career development, but you don't have to think that if I'm not going for promotion, somehow I am not growing, somehow I'm not developing. You know, you can develop laterally, you can develop horizontally. It doesn't mean that you always have to be climbing all the way. Sometimes you have to take a sideward step in order to then ultimately reach where you want to get to. Okay. Next slide, please. So in the original kind of Kawa approach, what you can do is you can look at it in two ways. You can look at a longitudinal way, which is thinking about, so where am I today in my career? And where have I been? Where did I start from after I graduated? And where do I want to go next? So you can map out in some ways your career journey from where you started to where you are at to where you want to go. And then you can also take stock. So you can say, actually, you know what? I'm really intrigued about where I am at this particular point in time. So you can take a snapshot. So that cross-sectional is a snapshot of where I'm at today, what's happening right this moment. And that snapshot, that cross-section allows you to more plan and set goals, because it kind of brings the kind of key issues into perspective. So you can think, okay, so these are the challenges I'm facing right at this particular point. Okay, these are the barriers that are in the way. These are the opportunities that I could have. This is the support that I have presently. And these are all influential things. So I'm just going to show you a cross-sectional, a longitudinal map first. So next slide, please. So this was something I mapped for myself a few years ago. And you can see that there were issues that I highlighted, which were things that happened in my career journey in the past. And then there is a particular point where I'm thinking about what's happening presently. And then also thinking about where do I want to be, or where would I wish to go in the future. And I think sometimes it's really important to understand where you've come from, because you can only appreciate where you are at and where you want to be by understanding where you've come from to a certain extent. And so it's really helpful to think, okay, so maybe this is where I started. These were some of the things that were really influential. Okay, you know, maybe one of the kind of key barriers that I faced was the stress of not knowing where to work. As you know, Steph was saying earlier on, sometimes you're starting that journey after you finish your studies and thinking, okay, so where do I specialize? And the unknown is a bit scary, right? So those could be potential roles. Or you could be thinking, okay, you know what actually is really supportive of me is my family, my friends. Actually, there are opportunities to do some kind of training to kind of equip me to work in that particular area. So those are the kind of positive things that you can draw on. And then you might think, okay, so my organization has changed. There's a reorganization taking place, and maybe your job is no more as it should be, or as it was, and you're thinking, oh, what do I do next? Do I stay here? Do I move to a new organization? Do I take a sideways step and work in a different specialty or practice area? Or do I have a total career change, right? So all these things are really important, because I think, as I was saying to you, we don't kind of think about things just in very separate ways. I think what the model allows you to do, or the approach allows you to do, is to think much more holistically of all the other things that have an impact on your decision making when you're thinking about what you do next within your career. So like myself, you know, I would be thinking about the financial implications. I'll be thinking about my family. I'll be thinking about my peers that I might be leaving if I move to a new area of practice. I'll be thinking about, oh, what's a new team like that I might be joining? I might be thinking, if I do this, what will I not be able to do? And I think all those things have an impact on your decision making. And so what this model or approach allows you to do is to really visualize the whole set of other things and then to explore them and to gain some insight and an understanding to kind of help you better make, I guess, the right decision, if you want to call it that, or maybe the correct decision for that particular point in time. And that might change, right? So you might come back. And also sometimes thinking ahead, thinking, okay, actually in 5 years' time, I would like to work at university and teach on the program. Okay, therefore, what might be some of the decisions I need to make now in order to put me in the best position in order to arrive at that place in 5 years' time? Or, you know, I want to go into management or I want to go into leadership. So what are some of the things I need to in a sense, put in place, building blocks to get me there, right? It's kind of goal set in some ways. Okay, so the next slide is a cross-sectional slide. I'm just going to show you. So this is what I mean. From that longitudinal, you almost have to take stock and say, okay, so what's happening right now? Okay, what are the challenges that I'm facing right now? Okay, maybe I'm really nervous about the change, or maybe I'm really unclear about what the new role will involve and what the environment will be. You know, what's the team going to be like? You know, do I have enough knowledge? And then you think about the context, right? The environment, and you think, okay, so I'm joining a new staff team. Will they accept me? Will I be comfortable? You know, thinking about the kind of social support you might have. So do you have social support from your friends, your peers, your family members? Thinking about the financial implications, and then thinking about some of the difference. You know, some of them could be positive, some of them could be negative. You might be thinking of your confidence level. You might be thinking about how stressed you are. You might be thinking, am I ready for this new thing? You know, is there some kind of training I can do to prepare myself for this new role? Is there opportunity maybe to do a secondment so I don't have to jump with both feet in? I can try it out, test it a little bit and see whether it works. And I think once you come to this particular place of doing a cross-sectional, it allows you then to plan what you're going to next. It allows you to set certain goals. It allows you to more constructively or in more concrete way take the next step or plan the next step. And I think this is as I said, this is a very different way of thinking. But I think sometimes you talk about lots of things, we all discuss, and then actually things are still not clear. And by putting in something on paper, by being able to visualize, by being able to move the pieces around, to change the scenario as a little bit more, it might then create a new way of understanding what's going on and what decisions you might want to make for yourself. So that's, I guess, the gist of it. I'm going to give the floor back to Steph. I can see some comments so far, but I will talk about it a little bit more later, or I'll respond to those a little bit more. But I hope it makes a little bit of sense. It is a little bit abstract, I know, from maybe some of the other models you've heard so far.
Thank you, Kian. And so Kian has outlined the Kawa approach, this idea of thinking about your career as a river. And as part of that, how does your river flow? What do the riverbanks look like? What are the rocks? Which is what I like about this. It's honest. It doesn't give an impression that our careers are beautifully mapped out for us. Sometimes there are genuine rocks that get in the way that we have to work out. How do we get around them? How do we break them? What's possible? And also this idea of driftwood and the unseen spaces. So like we said, a slightly different idea. So the first poll is, do you use the Kawa approach already for career planning? So as we anticipated, it started life and it still is very much a clinical model. It's starting to gain traction in career development. So 85% no, 14% yes. And now you've had a little bit of time to become aware of it. How likely are you to use this concept in the future? It's a very positive response, and they're not sure. Absolutely. And this is about thinking what we can offer to help you think about it a little bit more. What guidance can we offer? We'll come on to that later. It just gives us an alternative. Roxanne, I love your comment. It's oddly never occurred to me, but now it seems obvious. But then I think we are deeply entrenched in thinking about career ladders. It's almost goes so far as to say it's in our DNA. We're constantly forced, even from primary school. I have young children, and they're asked, what do you think you'll do when you grow up? And I think it's almost ingrained in how we think. And what we would like to do here is just offer that additional narrative to those of us who feel that there is an alternative to the ladder. And that's thinking about the river. There was also a few comments previously around remembering, and I should have reinforced that, the value of bringing your own knowledge and experience from previous life experience and previous work roles. If you've been a carer and all of that knowledge and skills, if you've been in a different paid career, and not to forget and lose all of that. And as Kian was saying, the Kawa offers you that opportunity to talk about and acknowledge your past and how that shapes your present and future.
I think it's really important that it marries. It doesn't extract yourself from your, career. It really allows you to really appreciate who you are and how who you are and your values, have an impact on the choices and decisions. And sometimes we don't take particular decisions because we are considerate at that particular point of our the other things that happen in our lives.
Yeah, the reality
it's not clear cut. You can't just say, oh, I don't care about anybody else, I'll just do what I want. That's not real, really. The only other thing I will quickly add is it's worth really having a go. I think once you've had a go once or twice, as I do with my students, they all kind of think, oh, this is all really interesting, but a little bit abstract. Once they have a go at actually trying to create one map and talk about it, they suddenly realize how much easier it is and how much more insightful it is in terms of helping them appreciate what some of the challenges might be and why they might have to take certain different decisions.
And it's the conversations that it starts. And as I'm seeing in the chat, it's about this formally sitting down and doing something like this, which is probably the bit that's been missing. So we're going to, before we move into the breakout rooms, we've got one more ask of you, and that's to rank the concepts in order of preference. So this, the poll will be coming up here. And this is just to get your first thoughts on which ones do you think you'll be putting in your front pocket, basically. Which ones have really landed with you the most? You're not sure about with others, and just have a go. It's all anonymous, so we won't know what's said, but please have a go at just ranking them in order of preference. Okay, we've got a few responses still coming in. I can't view the poll from my side. Can you see it, Kian?
I can probably get there. Oh, no, not quite yet. Oh,
not quite yet. We'll share that. We'll share it afterwards.
Yeah, I can't quite see it.
No worries, we'll find
Because I don't know whether it's, it just looks like, yeah.
That's okay. We'll find it later.
I'm
So if we
trying
move on to
finding it.
the next slide, what we're going to do, so you've heard that's the sort of the presentation bit over and done with. Now we know breakout room conversations, there's always that initial moment where you're like, oh, who's going to talk first? We're trying to keep this as informal and as interactive as possible. So if you know you don't normally go first, today's your chance to have a go at doing that. So we're going to, it takes a little while to get you into your breakout rooms. We're going to put you in, we invite you, if it's possible, to come, your microphones and cameras will be working. So if you are able to come and speak on the microphone in your breakout room and be seen, that's great. I know that some of you might be joining us from busy offices, open planned offices, as most of us work in. So if that's the case for you, please just let people know and use the chat box. But if possible, unmute yourself, come onto camera and have a conversation. What we'd like, we're going to give you 10 minutes just to talk about these concepts, about growth-based career planning, the 4 pillars of practice, the novice to expert versus specialist to generalist continuum, and the Kawa approach. We just would like you to talk about how you can use these concepts to support you in your career choices. What we're going to do after you have moved, we'll bring you all back into one room and we'll have a whiteboard and we'll ask you to either fill the whiteboard or the chat box afterwards. So grab a few thoughts as you're going, and whilst we're moving you into the breakout rooms, maybe start writing some ideas down about what you want to say around how you feel you can use these concepts. Going back to what Amanda said, please remember every opinion is perfectly valid. We respect expect difference. If you all come back and say the same thing, I think we'd be a little bit worried. So please just hold difference, respect difference. And something that I didn't say at the start, which I meant to, whilst the breakout rooms are being organised, is also a very big thank you to the team, especially Mike and Janet, who have organised the events today, and Amanda. Mike and Janet have done an enormous amount of work behind the scenes that you don't see when we all just turn up to webinars. And I just want to say how grateful I am for all of their hard work and effort.
So Steph,